All right, this is part 3 on Netnography. As I said, there are 4 little segments. This is part 3, and this time I want to look at data analysis. So you've been online, you've decided what it is you want to look at, you've got a data set. It could be posts on TripAdvisor, it might be advertisements for something, it might be the statements that corporations are making around a specific thing, for example, the Black Lives Matter protests. You've decided on your data set. It's something that you can manage. It's not just ever expanding data. I think one of the ways to do that is you might put a beginning and an end date on the posts that you're looking at. You might have a set number that you're going to look at. What you don't want is an unlimited data set that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, because you'll be doing the project forever. So you've got your data set. Now what do you do with it? Well, there's a few different approaches to data analysis. One is critical discourse analysis. So the key name in that space is Norman Fairclough. And again, I'll put links underneath so that you can look that up. This is almost a linguistic analysis, actually, where you're looking at what is being said, but crucially, what is not being said. So for example, when I was doing the Unlikely Hikers paper, some of the Instagram accounts will post a little caption, and then they'll put underneath the caption a land attribution. So I was looking at the United States, and some of the accounts will always say which indigenous group owns this land, traditional owners of the land. And what's interesting there is they've made an explicit choice to identify the indigenous owners of the land. And then the others, it's very obvious that they're not doing that. So you're looking not just at what's being said, but also in the other accounts, what's not being said. Another thing that happens in the Unlikely Hikers paper is some of the Instagram accounts will put pronouns. You know, this is somebody, brackets, she, her. Now, even if that person is cisgender, what that shows is that pronouns matter and that trans lives matter. And so what's happening in that space is by even mentioning cisgender pronouns and naming, it's making a statement around what's valuable. So with data analysis, critical discourse analysis, what you're looking at is what's being said and what's not being said. And looking at the empty spaces, at the gaps of what's not being said is as interesting as looking at what is being said. The other thing that CDA does, critical discourse analysis does, is it looks, for example, at verb forms. It looks at who is the subject of an action, who is the action being done to. So a good source for that is a researcher at Macquarie University in Australia. That's Annabel Lukin, Lukin. Again, I'll put links underneath. She's looked at the way war is reported, and specifically when this base was attacked, or so many Palestinian fighters die, and and it's like, no, they didn't just die, they were killed. Who killed them? So critical discourse analysis looks at the language that's used and looks at the gaps as well. Now, because the online space is very rich in visuals, you might also be doing a visual analysis, and a good name for that to look up is Sarah Pink. Again, I'll put links underneath. Sarah Pink's book called Visual Ethnography is very comprehensive in how we can analyse what's going on in visual spaces. So again, the Unlikely Hikers paper that I did recently looks not just at the captions and what is being said and what is not being said around unlikely hikers, but also the way that normativities are created and perpetuated through what happens in the visual images. So for example, looking at online outdoors advertisements, what's so interesting is how the same people are agents. So there might be a man and a woman in a campsite, but the man will be putting up the tent and the woman will at best be watching what he's doing. She might be cooking something. So even though both men and women are being portrayed in the outdoors, traditional gender roles are still part of that story according to the visual analysis of those images. So that's the end of part 3, where we look at data analysis. As I say, you can look at the language that's being used, you can look at the visuals that are being used. We're moving on to the last part, which is part 4, and I'm going to look at the question of ethics in Netnography.